Watching and enjoying films always comes with a certain degree of the suspension of disbelief. On an obvious level, there's fantastical elements like alien invasions, high-profile conspiracy, or basic magical formulae. But to look at things in a more subtle light, real life is unlikely to bring about such specific events that will occur in such a specific order that fantastical outcomes prevail. In the films, Charlie buys 2 chocolate bars and wins a trip to Wonka's factory. In real life, I buy 2 chocolate bars and I end up with an appointment at the dentist. As an audience, we can get on board with all of these phenomena quite easily, as long as everything is logical. Sadly, sometimes a film takes a step outside of its self-contained boundaries and we start to have issues. As soon as you have to ask, wait, why did that happen? Or shouldn't they have just done this, this and this? You're in trouble. And if a plot couldn't progress without a specific MacGuffin, chances are there'll be some quizzical looks on the faces of viewers. Maybe it's time to take a look at some of those moments that had us scratching our heads at plot curiosities or table flipping at the downright idiocy of some of those on-screen characters. I'm Ellie with Whatculture, here with 10 movie idiots who made simple solutions look impossible. Number 10. Gravity. You can't name your film after a law of physics only to defy it. Sci-fi films usually are the best films for smudging reality a little bit. Would Tony Stark really be able to synthesize a new element in his basement with some PVC pipes as he does in Iron Man 2? Well, no. Can the Men in Black really wipe your memory with a little blinky light? I don't know, maybe? That is the scary thing though, isn't it? You would never know. But when you take a look at sci-fi films grounded in some sort of realism, they can be a bit tricky. Take the 2013 space thriller Gravity, for instance. Hyper-realistic graphics and real-world settings made Sandra Bullock and George Clooney's spacewalk gone wrong all the more captivating. Space is super dangerous, and Gravity encapsulated the horrors of very possible events should those flimsy space stations encounter a problem. But there's something else that those astronauts don't want you to know, and that's that space can actually be quite mundane. Sure, seeing the rotation of Earth might be cool, but have you ever looked into how pooping works up there? Without gravity, it's messy, and I'm sure floating around weightlessly gets old once you've strapped yourself into bed a couple of times. Point being, they had to take some liberties to make things as exciting as they were. Take, for instance, the scene where our 2 protagonists end up tumbling through the vacuum. Stone gets caught on some cables coming from a defunct parachute and manages to grab his fellow astronaut as he nearly flies straight past. But the ropes won't hold them both, and so we say goodbye to George Clooney as he valiantly sacrifices himself so that Sandra Bullock might have a chance at making it back to Earth. Is the scene dramatic? Yes. Is it a heartbreaking display of selflessness? Absolutely. Could both parties involved have been very easily saved if either had even a rudimentary understanding of the laws of motion? Unfortunately, yes. With no gravity comes no momentum. Gently pulling on the rope would have been enough to nudge Clooney back in the right direction, instead of letting him continue to drift away into the abyss. Now, it doesn't need to be 100% accurate, but maybe a little more consultation with some clever science people might mean fewer misconceptions about space. Number 9. The Open House. That is not how phones work. The Open House is another one of those Netflix original horror films that, while they have the potential to be great in principle, are ultimately executed poorly. Troubled youth Logan, still traumatized from witnessing the accident that killed his father, is given the opportunity to house sit for his aunt with his mother Naomi at her open house. It's a remote, decent-sized house in the middle of the mountains, so his mother thinks it's a great chance for a break to try and mend their rocky relationship. But this is a home invasion thriller, so things are set to go wrong very fast. An unknown and ultimately completely anonymous killer rocks up to mess about with the duo for a few days, toying with them and eventually killing them. However, there are many times where the two could have very easily got away if they just hadn't been so stupid. For starters, if weird stuff starts happening like the house getting broken into only to find the dining table fully set for dinner, it's time to leave. But most annoyingly of all, when the proverbial starts hitting the fan, our not really a hero grabs his phone only to find that the faceless murderer has removed the SIM card. Ooh, you clever one, you. If only it were possible to still phone emergency services even without an activated SIM card. Oh wait, it is. Now this is a problem with horror films in general, just call the police. But part of me hopes that this is a moment of character idiocy because the alternative is that the filmmakers have no idea how phones work. Number 8. The Silence. Use wood chipper, it's super effective. If you haven't seen the Netflix original The Silence, I don't blame you. It looks for all the world like a bad knockoff of the 2018 critically acclaimed horror A Quiet Place, although it was technically produced before A Quiet Place and just released afterwards. It all starts with drilling into unknown caves which release a bunch of weird bat-like creatures who quickly spread and wreak havoc across the North American continent. Evolving in the dark means that they're blind and can only detect prey with sounds, which obviously means that everything descends into silence as the human race attempts to survive. Now, if these creatures were as smart as the ones in A Quiet Place, then the threat would make a bit more sense. But in the silence, we see the start of the invasion. Everyone still has the internet. News sites and social media continue to get updated, but apparently nobody could mobilize a slightly more efficient defense. And when I say that these things are not the ultra-smart creatures of A Quiet Place, I mean that they're really, really dumb. One scene shows them flying single file into a wood chipper because they are literally attracted to any sound at all. So let's break it down. Stupid bat things, easy access to Twitter, and I assume a fair number of wood chippers across the United States. Nobody thought to tweet out that turning on a wood chipper takes out a fair few of the weird bat things attacking everyone? Even a blender would have probably blitzed a couple. Simple. Number 7, A Quiet Place. You're just gonna leave those there? You know what, while we're at it, let's have a moment for A Quiet Place as well. It seems like in any situation with sonically dependent monsters taking over the Earth, a whole lot of common sense goes out the window. Our protagonists, the Abbott family, are definitely pretty smart, but they're still dumb. The opening of A Quiet Place truly shocked audiences with the immediate offing of the youngest son. He finds a spaceship toy, which his terrified father quickly confiscates, removing the batteries and placing both on a shelf and warning him that it's too loud to keep. His sister sneaks him the little rocket ship so he can play with it till his heart's content. Only he picks up the batteries too, and once he's figured out how to replace them, it immediately sets off lights and beeps. Yes, the family were smart enough to recognise the potential threat of a noisy toy, and it's true that they weren't really to know that Bo would somehow get his hands back on the toy and the batteries, but wouldn't it make a bit more sense to just, take the batteries out and let him keep the toy? No batteries means no beeps, and no beeps means no alerting the big scary monster, and no scary monster means no dead child. And then you could keep your little son, and he could have a nice new toy to play with too. Number 6, The Lord of the Rings. If only there were giant eagles in Middle-earth. It's well established that Gandalf the Grey has a hot wire to the Great Eagles, a race of, giant eagles who have often helped him out in particularly troubling times. So why then didn't Gandalf maybe try asking the eagles if they could airdrop the ring into the lava? Look, they might not have wanted to get involved, but Gandalf could have at least asked them. They could have at least given them a lift part of the way, and maybe we could have avoided a lot of the mess in the year it took Frodo to make it there on foot. Number 5, Jupiter ascending, wife and child, or telescope. This act of stupidity is simple and sadly all too real. At the beginning of the movie, Jupiter Jones's father lives in Russia with his pregnant wife and likes to look at the stars with a very fancy telescope. Now, it is a very fancy telescope, but one night burglars break into their home to steal valuables. They try to take his telescope, he tries to stop them, and he gets shot dead right in front of his pregnant wife. For some reason, this evidently very smart man decides that a telescope is worth risking his life over instead of protecting his family. This smidge of plot is unlikely to really change the wider events of the film, since Jupiter is already going to be the reincarnation of a space queen. Yeah, it's a weird plot, this film. But really, was protecting your telescope worth it in the end? More than protecting your pregnant wife? Priorities, man. Number 4, Avengers Infinity War. Peter Quill is a moron. This one might be the biggest fumbled victory in the history of the MCU. Okay, yes, Pete, you lost your girlfriend. She got killed. But they had Thanos. They were gonna get the gauntlet off of him, and yeah, Doctor Strange said there was only one future timeline where they win, but if they get the gauntlet off of Thanos, he's not gonna do anything. All Peter Quill had to do was nothing. Just do nothing. Just don't ruin it. Just sit in the corner, chill out, the rest of the team have it under control. Just don't ruin it. Come on. Number 3, Tangled. You're the bad guy. It's okay to lie. It's not always the side we're rooting for who makes questionable decisions. Mother Gothel, for all her clever witchy ways, makes a huge blunder almost immediately, and it's one that almost single-handedly kicks into motion the events of the film. She kidnaps the king and queen's daughter. She does this because the child has been bestowed with the gifts of a magic flower Gothel had kept secluded to keep secret the reason for her immortality. The girl grows up to be Rapunzel, her adopted daughter, who she keeps locked in a tower for her own safety, but who is bemused by the lantern show she sees in the distance on her birthday each year. It's this curiosity regarding the lights in the sky which compels her, at the earliest opportunity, to escape the tower and go adventuring. Of course, the lanterns are released by the king and queen in memory of their long-lost daughter. So why didn't Gothel just give Rapunzel a different birthday? She was presumably still a baby when the lantern ritual started, and so she's unlikely to recognize the date of her birthday had been changed, and so she wouldn't know the significance of the lanterns in the distance. It's simple stuff like this that holds back wannabe supervillains from true greatness. I mean, it's not difficult, really, is it? Make up a date, the 3rd of December, there you go, I've done it. Number 2, The Cabin in the Woods, just kill the dude. The Cabin in the Woods is a horror film for horror film lovers. It plays with the ideas of archetypal characters and formulaic horror plots to imagine a world where these films have a much more serious role to play. They're essential to the preservation of the entire planet. In the film, it turns out that all our favourite horror themes, the jock, the stoner, the blonde, the virgin, are all characters in this ritual who must be sacrificed to appease these creatures. But you can't just give them a quick bonk on the head and be done with it. Instead, the ritual must include torturing and terrifying the victims with some kind of classic horror baddie. Not completing the ritual will result in planet-wide destruction. So, after an ignored warning to stay away from the cabin, some hanky-panky, and some terrorising from a zombie family, 2 of the teen group selected as the sacrifices remain: the Jester, aka the Stoner, and the Virgin, whose death turns out to be optional thanks to some last-minute exposition from a cameo by Sigourney Weaver. Ripley makes it crystal clear that they have 8 minutes to kill the Stoner guy, or else the Ancient Ones will not be happy and will, destroy everything they know and love. They squabble, kill Weaver's character with some help from a Wolfman, and miss the literal deadline. The movie ends with a massive hand reaching out from the Earth's core and starting its destruction. Way to go, guys! Now obviously it's a hard sell if you're the guy in question, but one guy's life in exchange for the entire planet is a fair deal. Hell, if I was that guy, I wouldn't be thrilled about it, but I'd understand. Just make it as quick and painless as possible. Sigourney Weaver should have just shot him in the head the moment she saw him. Number 1, Saw. Guess we saw that one coming. These days, it's easy to forget how low budget or low concept Jigsaw's original traps were. Since the first installment, we've seen keys surgically implanted in eyes, motorcycle blenders, and shotgun collars. Yet Saw's bathroom trap was super basic. Just a couple of guys chained to the wall in a dingy bathroom somewhere. There's only a bathtub, some hacksaws and guns, and an already dead body. Their instructions are simple. Dr. Lawrence must kill his companion Adam, or else his wife and daughter will be killed, and Adam must escape. I assume without being murdered in the process. Unfortunately, with such limited tools at their disposal, the opportunity for idiocy somehow increases. The movie features an absolute mess of problem-solving from Dr. Lawrence Gordon. After he discovers a one-way mobile phone in the bathroom, it's obvious that this, the only potential contact they have with the outside world, is absolutely invaluable. I don't blame Gordon for being so desperate to answer it when it starts ringing, especially since it turns out to be a phone call from his distressed daughter. Yeeting the phone across the room when he hears the alarming commotion of gunshots and screaming, however, is not the one. Maybe the stress of the situation gets to him, or maybe he's delirious from the kidnapping. But the doctor's immediate reaction to his mobile phone falling out of reach is to hack off his own foot to escape the chains and reach the phone. Very icky. One question remains though, why didn't he just use the saw to reach the phone? We've all done the lasso trick to reach a charging phone from bed without wanting to physically get up, so I'm pretty sure he could have worked something similar out, either with the saw or with the shirt he so heroically ripped off to serve as a bandage for his self-amputation. Super gross, super horrific, and ultimately super stupid.